with lines. There you go. I
Yeah.
forgot. I just want to tell Marion your topic was very good last week, and I forgot to record it, but it was very good. It was a very good meeting. It was very good. I'm Nancy. I have been a part of a race since June of 2007. So I'm going into my 16th year of being part of this organization. Okay, racism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party. We have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to listen, learn, and not to argue. Okay, next we have the land acknowledgement, which is we begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many indigenous peoples, and that there were many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chitimacha, the Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Tonkawan, Lacan, Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the Wampanoag and the Nipmuc peoples in Boston, the Kalua and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and today. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are still on indigenous land and it will always be indigenous. Okay, well, next we'll go around and we'll have everyone introduce themselves. I will call on you as I see you in the order on my screen. So we'll start with Marion.
Good morning again, everyone. This is quite a stormy day. Anyway, glad to be here. I've been coming to these discussions since June of 1993. And we had a nice conversation before the official meeting started. So we're all revved up and jacked up and ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Marion.
Thank you, Nancy.
Bill?
I'm Bill Ives in New Orleans, and I've been coming to race for about 6 years. I was on something every time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Marva? You're muted.
Good
There you go.
morning. My name is Barbara. I've been coming to Erace post Katrina, and I look forward to these lively educational discussion every Saturday. I'm from New Orleans. Thank you.
Phyllis?
Good morning, I'm Phyllis. I'm in New Orleans in a slightly different location than you have previously seen me. And I've been coming to Erace since 2008.
Thank you. Pedro?
Hey, good morning. I'm here in Austin. Been coming to meetings the last 3 years, I guess about 3 years or so. Missed a few as I've been working on a private project, and it's good to be back.
Thank you. Stanton?
Good morning, Stanton in Austin, Texas. I've been coming for a little over a year now.
Thank you. Jean?
Yes, I'm Jean Walker in Silver Spring, Maryland. Excuse me. And I've been coming to Erace for about 2 years. We missed you last week, Marion, and it was a great topic. Thank you. Look forward to the day's topic.
Marla?
Hey, good morning. I'm Marla. I've been coming to Erace for a few years now, I think, and I'm in Metairie, a little outside of New Orleans.
Thank you. Cindy? You're on mute. You're still muted.
Okay, I'm Cindy Morse. I'm in New Orleans, uptown, right by the river where it's raining. It's actually slowing down now, but we've had quite a storm. Anyway, it's all good here, except how dark it got. It was scary. I'm looking forward to this. Been coming to Erace for about 6 years, I guess. Thanks.
Thank you. Larry?
Good morning, I'm Larry, and I started with Erace around 1995. And I always enjoy a bold and courageous conversation, minus the muzzle. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Gigi?
My name is Greer, and I've been attending Erace post Katrina since I guess about 2007, 2008.
Okay.
I'm ready for the discussion.
Okay. Glenn? Glenn, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
There you go. Okay. Introduce yourself.
Name is Glenn Abdullah. Looking forward to this morning's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Amal? Well, he's connecting to audio. He does. I'll let him introduce himself. But okay, the asset, Amal, can you hear me? Amal? Or maybe he doesn't have his audio up yet, but everyone I think has been
I'm
here.
sorry, yeah, I can hear
There
you.
you go.
I can
All
hear you.
right. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Amal. Been coming to Erace for 25 years now. So always enjoy the conversation.
Thank you. Okay. We ask that everyone keep themselves on mute unless they're speaking. We keep a list. Raise your finger to get on the list, or there's a little hand feature that you can use to put your hand up, and I can see that as well. And I'll put you on the list. We speak in order of the list. We try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. I do have a timer. Be respectful. Don't interrupt the speaker. No personal attacks. You can ask a clarifying question of the speaker by raising 2 fingers. Okay, and then there's only 2 clarifying questions per speaker. A clarifying question is, could you please explain, or didn't understand what you thought. All right. Then like about 15 minutes, like 20 minutes before the end of the meeting, which is at 11:30, we will go into the wrap up. And at that point, if you would keep your comments to approximately a minute. If you haven't spoken throughout the meeting, you could have the full 2 minutes for your time. We usually take those people first who haven't spoken. Let's see what else we got here. All right. The reason I brought the topic well, it's like Marion said, we had a pretty lively discussion prior to as we were waiting. We had board meetings at 9:00, so we had some time in between. And we kind of started talking a little bit about the topic before the 10 o'clock. And I was telling them that the reason that I settled on my topic as being immigration is because I was listening to WWL at work, and the topic was about Title 42 expiring. And it was interesting the comments that were being made about immigration. Okay, and it's, to me, I find it infuriating that one of the people texted in that the immigration problem started when with the Mayflower. I got a chuckle out of that and feel that is true, because I felt that as long as immigrants were coming from Europe, it's fine. But as the immigrants started coming from Black and brown countries, now they have a problem. And they are going to send troops down to the southern border, particularly because they see that as the epicenter of the border crisis, El Paso, Texas. And they are expecting 10,000 people a week to start coming across the border illegally or seeking asylum. And that the border states, which are Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, are overburdened with the border crisis. So I just thought it would be interesting to discuss the perspective on it. So the list is open. Okay, we have Pedro and we have Cindy. All right, Pedro, 2 minutes.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I cut my teeth on back in the 70s and ever since has been paying very close attention to and reading up on, which I think is really essential to an understanding of the immigration crisis, is our policies towards countries of the South from a military and economic perspective. And, you know, I think this whole issue of immigration, it triggers emotions from everybody about how we got to protect our borders. We can't let everybody in, this, that, and the other. It never addresses the root problem, the root cause, if you will, which are the ways that we have influenced these countries of the South in a way to promote governments that are very, very repressive, that allow a very small elite, including multinational corporation interests, to go in and overwhelmingly suppress wages, suppress workers' rights, kick people off of not a life for themselves. And as a result, you have are people that cannot make a living. They can't support their kids, and they do what any of us would do, is in order to seek a better life or even any quality of life for our children and our family, we have to move. So it's like until that's addressed, you know, and such. And then even in the countries that seem to do real well with starting to make those types of changes, they end up getting sanctioned. If you'll notice in this article, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, all heavily sanctioned countries by the United States that make living conditions terrible. I mean, tens of thousands of people die in Venezuela alone each year based on our sanctions. The fact that we will not.
Would you like to get back on the list?
No, is that 2 minutes already?
Yeah, it goes by fast.
Well, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks
you
for-
get back on the list because Cindy and Bill are on the list. Does anyone else like to be on the list? Oh, now, come on now. Everybody has so much to say before the meeting starts. All talking. Now we're all silent. Okay. Cindy, you're next. Oh, Marion. Okay. Unmute, Cindy.
I volunteer with a group called Grannies Respond, which is a national group, started in New York maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know exactly when, to meet the buses with immigrants coming here, to provide some sort of moral support, a big smile, a package that has toothbrush, toothpaste, a couple of snacks, some Kleenex, not a lot, but something that says welcome and we appreciate your being here. There's never any money that changes hands. Usually they're not very, if any English, only a few words. I've done that for the last 3 years, going down with a friend to the bus station every Wednesday night. And it was anywhere from 5 to 15 to even 20 people coming, sometimes families with children, sometimes just the grown-ups. In the last month, 6 weeks, it's dwindled to being 2 or 3 people, if that. And I spoke to one of the leaders of the group yesterday who says there's now been a change in policy, funny thing about that there have not been more than 10 people coming at a time in weeks. And so they've not been meeting all the buses. We ran out of volunteers, really, is what it takes. So they're now suggesting all of a sudden it's going to turn around and there'll be a lot of people coming. So we are encouraged to start up the process again, to go down whether we know if anyone's coming or not. You don't have a way of knowing ahead of time. It'd be nice if you did, but at this point in time, you don't. So we'll see what happens. I will keep you informed, but I was told yesterday, they don't know exactly when it's going to begin, but they're expecting a big influx, just like your article says.
Okay, thank
Who
you.
knows?
I have Bill and then Marion. Anybody else like to get on the list? Thank you.
I want
Bill?
to second what Pedro said. We create the conditions in those countries that drive people to the United States out of desperation, but we committed those situations. NAFTA, at the time, this was earlier, there was a big spike in illegal Mexican immigration, but NAFTA destroyed the Mexican agriculture industry because the U.S. farmers could undersell the Mexican farmers because they had government subsidized that were paid for by our taxes. So the Mexican agricultural workers were denied a way to work. So they went north to the United States to work in the industry that put them out of business. And a lot of the countries in Central America, people don't want to leave their home, but they're driven out of their home by desperation. And our country has contributed to a lot of those situations where desperation is observed, are happening. So we need to, in fact, address the conditions in the countries in a fair way, so people will not come to our country in such droves. But we should also welcome all immigrants including those from Central and South America.
Thank you. Right on time. We have Marion, Stanton, and then Glenn. Anyone else? Okay, Marion.
I agree with Bill that the United States, in many ways, has been responsible for some of the very negative things that have been going on in some of these countries. And I hate to sound like the voice of gloom and doom, but I'm afraid that these at some point that these folks are going to be met by certain persons from this country who have this very irrational fear of the browning of the United States. But I'm going to hope and pray. Might be naive on my part, but I am going to hope that these people, when they do start coming, are received in a very positive way. But there's some little nagging undercurrent in my gut that's telling me that there's going to be a certain resistance to the arrival of these folks. And I hoping that no one gets hurt. And I'm going to not go near that other possibility. I just hope that there is going to be a more positive outcome in the reception of these folks. And I'm pretty certain that our president and anybody that's going to be affiliated with this influx of persons is going to be taking the necessary steps where the situation is going to be positive and there won't be violence. But as I said, deep in my gut, I'm really kind of wary, but I'm hoping that the outcome will be positive.
Thank you, Marion. We have Stanton and then Glenn. Would anyone else get on? Okay, Stanton.
Yeah, in response to what Pedro was saying, I guess I have a little different perspective on foreign policy issues. I'm not suggesting that the United States foreign policy has been appropriate in many instances, and I think that a lot of things have changed since he and I were growing up back in the 60s and 70s about the Cold War and attitudes towards the left-wing governments. But I'm not going to say that Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua are paradigms of some kind of utopia. They are repressive regimes. They have one-party rule. They jail the opposition. A very rich country like Venezuela that has squandered its oil resources has made life and conditions for the average person there impossible and unbearable. So this isn't an anti-immigration position I'm taking. I'm not against the individual immigrant, but some of the conditions that are leading to their departure is not just the one-sided issue of how the United States foreign policy dictates what happens in those countries. The other thing I'd like to just quickly say is that I also think there's a big issue, which is never really talked about anywhere, which is overpopulation and the fact that resources are scarce. And it's not just a United States issue. We see what's happening in Europe with immigration coming from places in Africa and from places in Asia where resources are scant. I heard someone say that I think 40% of the population of Egypt is under the age of 25. So those are some real world problems that we also need to discuss and how to make conditions for individuals in their own country improved. But it's not just a question, I don't think, of United States foreign policy towards those countries. I think it's a much bigger issue than that.
Yeah. Next, we have Glenn.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we are so far removed from the border and what those cities had to deal with. So we can say let them in, but they're not coming to New Orleans. We're not being
Larry.
overwhelmed. You know, when you have populations coming into to a city, and city got to use its funds, and all the rest of the United States is not helping. The federal government is not coming in and say, well, look, I'll take care of the extra cost of taking care of those people. They put the burden on the people who are on the border. So you in New Orleans, or you on this air right here, say, well, let them on in. You're not being affected. And I ain't heard no solutions. I just hearing all this, all this tear jerking stuff. What are your solutions? I would like for a solution, not just give me a history lesson. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Next we have Larry.
Well, there is such a thing called the brotherhood of man. And sometimes these borders are created, in accordance with a nation's best interests. And when I say nation, I don't mean country. I mean nation as in people, And I'm always amazed sometimes when some people say things have gotten better, and we point out some of these countries down in South America about how they jailed oppositions and things of that type. And I think every year, the United States, some kind of way, found a way to put out a human rights report card on other nations, as if we've got perfect human rights here, and as if we don't jail the opposition here. How many people we have in jail now that shouldn't be there? We kill the opposition. We kill Martin Luther King, kill Malcolm X, killed Medgar Evers, and Schwerner, I think, Goodman and Cheney. So, yeah, this nation has a history of doing the same thing. Some of these other nations do. And some of these other nations do what they do because they look at America's history and how America treated the least of its people. And so sometimes they might. I mean, what we had in Serbia this week, I think, 2 mass killings in Serbia. I mean, what does Serbia know about mass killings? But they see America doing it until the next mass killing take place, and then the airwaves going to be dominated with 24 hours conversation. Then it's going to die down until the next mass shooting. So America's hands are dirty, and we cannot let the history of America off the hook. So I think what's going to eventually lead to our downfall is we letting all these people come over, but we're not providing the resources in terms of taxes or anything else, and we have what, $32 trillion deficit? It's going to get worse. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the list is open. Okay, Pedro and Stanton. Thank you, Pedro.
Yeah, I think, I hope I didn't come across saying that the U.S. foreign policy was the only problem that faces and creates this mass immigration, but it is overwhelmingly the biggest problem. And we're historically indoctrinated to not know our history, to not know that in Bolivia, we helped overthrow their Evo Morales, their president. In Ecuador, it was Correa. In Honduras, it was the 2009 coup. In every instance, if you look at it, and this is the way I look at it, how were the majority population's living standards? Did poverty go up or go down? And did life expectancy go up or go down? Did access to education go up or go down? In every instance in my discoveries, we show that the objective result of U.S. Involvement in these countries is that the majority population's interests go down. Now, that doesn't mean that Venezuela is a great place to live, but to blame everything on Maduro and I'm not a big fan of Maduro. He's made a lot of mistakes, but to blame everything on that government without looking at the wild card, which is our sanctioning, our undermining of these nations and trying to put into power those types of interests that are more friendly to foreign investment policies, it keeps us blinded from the reality that if it doesn't change, there's going to be huge immigration issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Stanton. Anyone else? Okay.
You can put me on.
Glenn, okay.
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you, Pedro, for that clarification. I think that's a little bit of a more rounded perspective as far as the United States and its foreign policy. And in response to Larry, yeah, this country certainly does not have clean hands. We have done a lot of horrible things over the centuries, and we have exploited people and we have killed and jailed people unjustly. But by comparison, and it's always by comparison, you don't see a mass exodus of people wanting to leave this country to go someplace else. There are exceptions. There are people who have left for various reasons, but for the most part, you don't have an immigration or an emigration problem from the United States going elsewhere in the world. The conditions in the countries that we're talking about are truly, truly abominable, and the life and the living standards there are atrocious. So that is what pushes people to leave. It's the same reason that, again, people are leaving African countries, because of the living conditions and the opportunities are non-existent. So again, it's just by comparison. Yeah, the United States is not someplace most people think about leaving. Maybe another Trump administration would change that. But yeah, I think the issue is overwhelmingly more complex than just the United States policy towards other countries. I think it is a multiple factored situation where the conditions in the world are changing. Climate is making conditions worse for many people. Crops are failing in countries. Just saw a big article, or actually an interview with people in India and how their crops are failing due to climate change, and the availability of food is becoming more difficult by the day. So the world is changing, and again, I think there are many factors other than policy.
Thank you. Right on time. You guys are getting good. Glenn.
Yeah, like I say, I keep hearing everybody get on and talk, but they're not bringing those solutions with their talk. You know, it's a government by the people. What ideas do you have to give to your leaders to solve the problem, besides just complaining and protesting? What ideas do you have? You seem to be having a bankruptcy of ideas. No ideas at all. And we cannot solve all the miseries that are in the world. Even if we wanted to, even if we tried to do it, it's impossible. The world is too big for some country that's so rich that they can solve all the poverty in the world, all the injustices in the world. Only thing we can do is like anybody has done wrong in the past, ask for forgiveness and do your best not to repeat it. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I have a clarifying question, right? Do you think that if you wrote to your legislative representative with a plan, that they would actually listen to you?
They do. You know, our leaders went to them time to time. it you know, like Pedro said, like he the only one knows history. You know, during the time of Frederick Douglass, he went to Grant and asked him to do something about the Ku Klux Klan, and Grant wiped them out after after uh, uh, Frederick Douglass went to him. Frederick Douglass went to Lincoln and asked to have the black soldiers to be a part of the war. Yeah, they listened. What you think, Martin? You think they didn't listen to Martin Luther King?
Well, that was kind of bent, but that's all right. Thank you. Next we have Greer, Jean, Marla, and then Larry. Anyone else want to be on the list? Greer, you're next.
Okay. So to be honest, it's laughable because anyone expecting America to do anything when it can't benefit off of these people. Again, resources are an issue. But if you think about it, we need to clean our own house. Things need to be right here. We're still fighting our first fight. And big business exploits these people, and the government knows it. You have factory workers who come over and or who are hired as undocumented or known to be undocumented. You have migrant workers who are picking crops, undocumented. And what the companies do to keep from paying them, they'll hire them, then call immigration to come pick them up before the payday.
Yeah.
Also, undocumented immigrants come to this country and they pay $11 billion a year in taxes that they can't get back. The federal government is well aware of that. And guess what? They're keeping that money. They're not trying to send it to those countries. So honestly, to think America's gonna do anything positive with this, not even. We have to clean our own house before we can help somebody else. It's like feeding your neighbor's kids when your kids are starved. I have no expectation, to be honest with you, because Black people are still in the situation they're in this country. That's it.
Thank you, Gigi. Next we have Jean.
This is all brought back an experience that I had in the 1970s. I found myself in Nicaragua, and I was picked up at the airport and we're driving down a road. Finally, and we were passing wires, barbed wire along the side. And finally, somebody said, "You better turn around because they're shooting at each other across the road at the other end." So we did, but the bottom line is I was staying at a hotel and I could look out my window and see the people there foraging for food out of the garbage pit, and nobody cared. Somoza, they'd had a big earthquake, United States sent money. Somoza had it in his pocket along with his other cronies, and it didn't go to the people. I mean, the conditions were just appalling. That the people were living in not bombed out, but earthquake shattered homes. They didn't have proper dwellings. They didn't have food. It was an incredible experience. And,
yeah,
I see why they're leaving. And here we are now. We're applauding ourselves for going for electric cars. And what is that doing can't remember the exact country in Africa, but there's a metal that they get from there. And people who are farmers can no longer farm on their land because they're mining. The companies are coming in and mining for this metal so that we can have electric cars. They have to sell their land at a pittance. Then they have to rent the land from somebody else in order to continue to thrive at a minimum level at that point. With, I agree with Greer in many ways. Our hands aren't clean. We are using immigrant children to do dangerous jobs. And we've got a movement afoot now in this country that is going to remove
Labor,
protections
absolutely.
for child
Jean, you
labor.
want to get back on the list?
No, I'm fine.
Can I ask a
Okay.
question?
Yes.
Okay, Pedro. Yes.
Yeah, Gene, when you say the farmers aren't able to farm over there because they're taking their land, that's the United States taking their land, or is that the government of their own country taking their land?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, Glenn. I read an article recently about it. I was just appalled, and I thought people don't look at the consequences of their actions, and they just are glorifying getting everybody using electricity instead of gas. And yet, but I can't answer your question. I'll try to find out and tell you next time. You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Okay, this is who we have. We have Marla, Larry, Bill, Greer, and Pedro. Stan. Okay, Marla.
Yeah, I just had some similar thoughts as Greer, in that I don't, been to answer Glenn's question about solutions. I truly don't believe that there are real solutions to this, as long as the United States / capitalism continues to be guided by xenophobia, right? I mean, this country is partially shaped by xenophobia, by immigrants in, immigrants out. We have deported more immigrants since, I think it's like the 1880s or 1890s, than any other country. And because of capitalism, I think we open and close the door to the borders based on what works best. We have been able to, our powers that be have created an expendable class, if you will, of people who labor for low wages, but we can close that down at any time when it's no longer profitable to us in our country. Those are my feelings on that. We just exploit and create this permanent class that does the work that quote unquote nobody else wants to do. So it's about resources, but I think it's xenophobia and resources tremendously intersect here. That's it.
Thank you, Marla. Okay, next we have Larry.
Glenn offers.
Put me on.
Okay.
Glenn said that what are the solutions being offered? Some solutions are outside of the pay grade of those who may express opinions on certain things. And so on last week, we talked about voting. And for those like yourself who are so adamant in voting, you put the pressure on those that you elect. Let them come up with a solution. Yes, there are solutions, but we have to get beyond greed and capitalism in America. And the money has been hauled by and that was remain one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere because of what France did when the Haitian people just desired to be free. France put reparations on them, and they've had to pay millions and millions of dollars over the last several years, 100 years. And the United States joined in and was a part of it. After the temple of Jerusalem was destroyed, and in the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, the Jews came together and they rebuilt the temple. But the Bible said the people had a heart to work. So if we have a heart to work and can get beyond politics and Republicans and Democrats and who's going to get the glory or whatever. This thing could have been solved. But year in and year out, we talk about the same thing, but nothing gets done because this nation is so divided. Some are so intent on protecting their wealth and their status and their position, and others are struggling just to have a piece of it. I heard something go off.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Next we have Bill.
I just wanted to second a lot of people who said our capitalism exploits immigrants. When they were discussing border policy, I remember reading a lot of the radical right wanted they wanted to keep undocumented workers in this country because they could exploit them. They wouldn't have any rights. So they wanted a class of undocumented workers to exploit. They didn't want them documented. It would make it harder for them to exploit them. I was briefly, and I know this is a false equivalence, I'm not trying to establish, but I was an undocumented immigrant in the UK and Canada. But I certainly had my white privilege going for me. But I got a parking ticket wrongly done, and I couldn't protest it because I was undocumented. That was just a tiny thing that I experienced. But the undocumented workers in this country have no rights, and they can be put to work for below minimum wage. It's a travesty. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next we have Greer. Mute, Greer.
I was thinking about Haiti, and Mr. Larry said something about it. Haiti had been under the control of the United States since 1915, and there's been no growth there by design. We've put in people to do our bidding in terms of leadership. Again, nothing's got better. It's by design. And then with the child labor and exploitation, you notice all these companies who do child labor and exploit these children, none of them ever are prosecuted for it. None. I have never heard of anybody being prosecuted for using child labor, because they just, in Louisville, Kentucky, last week, they had 2 kids, 10 years old, working at McDonald's for, it had to be like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they hadn't been paid. You had a Hyundai factory in Alabama where they had child labor going on, where kids had been missing from school. And they wondered, well, where did these kids go? Those kids were working in the factory. Did they close it down? America is only about benefiting. If America can't benefit off of you, you're thrown to the wayside. And America has this unspoken saying, we can do what we want to do without you doing it too. And that even goes down to the people. It's unwritten, but that's how life is in this country. Certain people can do what they want to do without other people having the same right to do it, but yet they're citizens. I remember when Elian Gonzalez, they found him floating. He came in. It was a whole thing about this. This mother risked her child's life. They wanted to take this boy from his.
You want to get back on the list?
Okay, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, then next we have, it's 10:52. Pedro, Stanton, Glenn, and then Greer again. Anyone else like to get on the list? Okay. Pedro.
Yeah, I think Glenn makes a good point that just complaining about something without solving it doesn't really solve it, and I think that's true. Um, but you got to also understand the cause of an illness before you can cure it. Otherwise, it will never get cured, and it's painful to hear these things if they're true. And I don't put them forth unless I've really got information to back that up, which obviously you can't share in 2 minutes. But for instance, Haiti, we're talking about Haiti. Aristide was the first democratically elected president. We overthrew him twice, 2 coups by the United States. It's not just the US, it is France. It's these very powerful former colonial powers. If you want to look up Aristide and the Lavalist Party, what the Lavalist Party did for the people of Haiti, and you will see an incredible improvement in all these indices I was mentioning earlier. When you go to the African continent, I'm not sure what gene needed for batteries, lithium batteries, and that type of thing. The whole history of Africa by France, England, Belgium, the United States has been the exploitation of their minerals. So absolutely, those corporations are the ones that are benefiting. They get governments in power that allow them to do that. So to blame it on the government without looking at who's backing those governments will keep us from really getting at the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Stanton.
Yeah, another aspect that I would like to bring up because it hasn't been mentioned yet is the impact of the cartels in these various countries and the problem of drugs, and that the United States is such a major consumer of the product. So when you have people living in abject fear that if you don't participate in the cartel in a local community in Mexico or other parts of Central America, they kill you, they kill your brother, they kill your sister. And so the fear that's inherent in those situations also causes a lot of people to want to leave their home country. And when you hear people being interviewed and why they left and why they're asking for asylum, a lot of that has to do with the absolute fear that they live in on a daily basis in the country they live in. And another thing I just wanted to just throw out there for thought is you don't see any mass exodus of people from Costa Rica for some reason. And there you have a Central American country, but yet things don't appear to be in a state where you have people wanting to leave Costa Rica and come to the United States. They have an immigration problem of Nicaraguans coming into Costa Rica. That's their immigration problem. So there are success stories as far as I can see. I don't know why they're successful. I know that they have a democracy. I know that they don't have a standing army, but they're, for all intents and purposes, a successful country in the same region as these failure states. So just thought I wanted to throw that out there.
Yes, thank you, Stanton. Okay, Bill, I got you. We have Glenn, Greer, and then Bill. Glenn?
Yeah, another thing that immigrants send billions of dollars back to their people in their country, billions. The money they make here, they able to support families over there, put family through school. So it's like we can only see something through a tunnel vision. We're not seeing all the benefits of it. We can see, it's almost like you look at a insect and say, well, we need to kill all these insects, but you don't see the benefit the insect is doing. I remember I was watching a program about the Chinese and their great leap forward. They wanted to increase their food growth. And so they kept the sparrows from coming down and eating the plants. So they kept waving. They had so many millions of Chinese up there waving flag so the pharaohs would not land. So the pharaohs died of exhaustion by not able to land. And what they discovered is that the sparrows was a benefit to them because they were eating the insects. The insects overtook the crop. So we are looking at America as
Larry.
only to one site, and you don't see all the benefits that America means to the rest of the world. There are many other benefits that outweigh some of its bad things. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, we have Greer, Bill, and then Larry. Greer.
Yeah. America has a history of exploiting since before America was America. The Indians were exploited, slaves exploited, Asians exploited. Notice the trend. They will only exploit you if they can benefit from you. And I remember when I was in school and Elian Gonzalez was going on. And people were like, oh, that's horrible. His mother wanted him to get to freedom. And I'm just looking at these people in my class. And I'm like, but his daddy didn't say it was okay to risk my child's life. And the government was like, oh, we're not going to let him go back. They used the child, but let's just think if that was little Neville with dreads from Haiti in that inner tube floating in the water, would it been that all that type of fanfare? And we have a history of a classism and racism in this country. Honestly, all I can do is pray for these people, because at the end of the day, America's going to do what it does. If it can benefit from you, it will. If not, then you're disposable. And we've seen that throughout the history of this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Greer. Next, we have Bill.
I'm sorry, I forgot what I was gonna say. They take me off the list. If I think of it, I'll ask to be back on.
Okay, well then next we have Larry.
One of the other things America is good at is making leaders of other countries out to be the boogeyman. And, you know, whether it's Castro in Cuba, Aristide, blaming the Mexicans for drugs instead of considering our own insatiable appetite for drugs. We want to blame Putin. We want to make him out to be a boogeyman. But this war in Ukraine, that goes all the way back to World War II, and especially the fall of the Berlin Wall, or rather the end of communism, I think I might say, when those countries broke away from the Soviet Union and NATO began to absorb those countries into NATO. I knew when that began to happen, that was going to be a slap in the face at Russia. So Russia had just cause to think of its own security. And part of that, we lied relative to an agreement of not absorbing some of those countries, but we didn't keep our agreement. So, you know, there's a lot of dirt to go around, and Putin is not the boogeyman that we try to make him out to be. I'm not saying his hands are clean, but he may not be the boogeyman that we make him out to be. And what America has to benefit other countries has always been what's in it for America. America has always invested in their interests. What's Kamala Harris done in Africa now? Because America neglected Africa for so long, and now China is in there reaping the benefits, and now all of a sudden Kamala Harris gonna go over there on behalf of the America. Now we want to reestablish some kind of relationship with Africa where we've been neglecting them for years. So if we have a heart to do it, and quit all the bickering and racism and greed. Yeah, we could absorb those people coming over. It's gonna be tough, yes, but it's about sacrifice. Humanity is about sacrifice. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Okay. It is 11:02. Is there anyone else that would like to get on the list?
Sacrifice.
Pedro? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is like the fourth time I'm on the list.
That's fine.
So anyhow, I just wanted to thank everybody for putting up with me. But, you know, I appreciate what Stanton was asking about Costa Rica. And, you know, when you look at Central American history, you can look at how we influenced the development of their agriculture. We've kept countries like Honduras and, you know, whether it was Somoza, Nicaragua, as Gene was talking about, or these other really bad leaders. What they do is they allow investment. And when I'm saying investment, Stanton, what I'm referring to is that they turn into like monocrop cultures. In other words, if you look at coffee and bananas, they almost overwhelmingly are the only two crops that are grown in these countries. And so world prices fluctuate. They take a beating, but the corporations do fine or whatever. Your question about Costa Rica is it's a very hilly country. It's a lot of mountains, and there's a lot of things that contribute to the content of your question, which I think is really valid. But that's part of it, that it was not as easily exploited by these big farming kind of interests. They do export a huge amount of coffee and such, but it just was able to be kind of an enclave within that environment because of its geography a lot and other interests. I just wanted to put that out there, though. And if you look at real quickly in the Caribbean, it was all sugar. Every country there, their whole economy was around sugar, not because they wanted sugar, but because they were invested in a way with slave labor to create sugar and create what I think Gigi was referring to as, you know, this huge profiteering. I mean, if we can't make a profit on it, then you know, you're safe from our investment, you know, that type of thing. Thank you.
Stanton has a clarifying question.
Yeah, I just want to clarify one thing with you, Pedro. So
Yeah.
do you think Costa Rica's internal policies also played a factor in their success? Their decisions to pursue certain internal policies?
I'm sure it did. I mean, it's well known that Costa Rica is a very attractive location for a lot of people. And as you've indicated, they don't have that huge number of people emigrating from their country. I'm just suggesting that what creates the immigration is the unbalanced investment capital that goes in and affects it. And if you don't have as much in there in that regard, and I think their decision to stay away from an army, a standing army, was a very important motivating force there. I'm not an expert in that, but those are just my reflections.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Bill is going to speak, and I think then we're going to move into the wrap up. So, Bill?
I remember what I was going to say. Cindy and I spent 2 weeks in Costa Rica in 2019 on a home exchange. It's a beautiful country, and slogan of the country is Pura Vida, the pure life. And 40% of the country is in national parks. Their main industry is ecotourism. So they want to attract people. And they also export a lot of coffee, but the backbone of the economy is ecotourism. So that motivates them to take care of their country and do a lot of environmentally progressive actions. Also, Panama and Belize, those three countries, along with Costa Rica, are a major place where American expats go to retire because of the attractiveness of the country. And you don't see a lot of immigrants from Costa Rica, Panama, and Belize because their countries are attractive. So if we work to make the other countries in Central America attractive to their citizens, we would, the normal immigration would occur, but not the flood. And we need normal integration to revitalize our country and give it new ideas. We all benefit from immigration and learning from other cultures. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, it's 11:08 and we're gonna move on to our wrap up. And we're gonna start with people who haven't spoken. You have the right to pass. I passed. But if you haven't spoken and you choose to take your full 2 minutes. Okay, so we'll start with, as I see you on my screen, Marva.
I've learned quite a lot during this discussion. I want to thank everybody for the views and facts. Thank you all. It's been an interesting discussion. Thank you for all the Nancy.
Well, thank you. You're welcome. Okay, next, Louise.
I apologize for my tardiness. I obviously have no idea what came before, but my idea of immigration is obviously this country was founded on immigrants and we kind of need them. They help with a lot of nasty, horrible jobs that other citizens don't want to do. And it's maybe very naive of me, but it was something that Bill kind of said, like, surely if we fix the problems in the country, because some of them, they're fleeing from horrible violence and terrible poverty, if we could fix and help those problems, then yeah, maybe America wouldn't be so attractive to them and their own places would be. So I'm sure we can do that, but we just choose not to. Anyway, thanks. Have a great weekend, y'all.
All right, thank you, Louise. Phyllis.
I think it was helpful to learn the kind of things that the Biden and, if we looked back further, Obama administration have done in terms of immigrants. Those are, allegedly for most of us our side of things, but they still have questionable immigration policies. And I think my big concern is the suffering that we saw when Trump was in office and the kids were being separated from their parents, and who knows if those families were ever, all of them, reunited. I haven't heard anything about that in a while. But I hope it will go back to people have the right to claim asylum, request asylum, and that the terms illegal immigration will be, nuanced better, because if you do have the right to cross the border and claim asylum, you're not illegally immigrating. I just appreciate knowing all this and appreciated the different perspectives and the information provided by people with knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. And lastly, let's see. Amal.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, it's part of the hypocrisy of the United States. Nobody wants to say it, but the United States is just becoming too colorful for some white folk, and that's just what it is. When in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, when there was these mass immigration of people coming from Europe, this wasn't a conversation. But now that these people are coming from non-European or white nations, now we have a immigration problem. This wasn't a problem in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So this is just a part of the hypocrisy of the United States, wanting to let in who they want to let in and exclude others. But yet we promote let me quit saying we, yet the United States promotes itself around the world as a country of immigrants. No, you're not. You're not. You never have been. But it looks good on paper though. It really does. You know, if you're Cuban and you make it to Miami, you all right. If you Haitian, and they find out they can turn you around and send you back to Haiti. So this is all a continuation of that hypocrisy of the United States. And if these people were white, we wouldn't even be having a conversation. But the fact that they're not, that's what's causing the problem. So
Thank you, Mom. Okay, next we will move to the 1 minute wrap up. And I'll call you in order as I see you on our screen. Marion.
This topic could not have come up at a more important time. As I said before, I hate to sound like the voice of gloom and doom, but hopefully the persons who are going to be involved in this process are going to be positive, forward-thinking people. And we're going to have to extend the element of really being decent and fair human beings. So I hope when these folks start coming, that everything is going to be as peaceful and calm as possible. Thanks for a very good topic, Nancy.
Thank you. Bill.
Yeah, great topic, Nancy. In the last 2 weeks, I decided I wasn't going to say anything and just listen. But the temptation to speak was too much for the last 2 weeks. Maybe I'll succeed next week. Thank you. It was a great discussion, great article to create that discussion.
Thank you. Pedro.
Yeah, I just real quickly, I think the brilliance of oppression is that it distracts the majority population from real issues of overwhelming importance. Not that the focus is only on unimportant things, of course. But, I'm thinking about, before our meeting, we were talking about George Washington having slaves. It's interesting. You live in a culture, and back then in George Washington's culture, slavery was accepted. Unbelievably, it was accepted or rationalized in some form or fashion. And I just wonder, how we are kind of blinded a little bit in today's culture by things we just don't really see or feel. That we have certain prejudices that sometimes will create our and taint our interpretation of things like the immigration problem. We get, it's almost like we get played sometimes to really, blame it all on the immigrants rather than these other issues that we raised today. So I don't know. That's just kind of what I was thinking of. I was trying to think of my own hidden biases that I'm not understanding about myself as well. So thank you all for the discussion today.
Okay, thank you, Pedro. Next, Stanton.
Thanks for the discussion and everyone's perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy.
Good discussion. It's a very complicated issue, and we can come at it from lots of angles and still be confused. I wish Biden well. Good luck. Hopefully it won't be Trump, but you never do know. He's got strong powers behind him. Anyway, we'll look forward because we can't really go back. So hopefully we can keep our eyes open and pay attention. Thanks.
Thank you. Larry.
You know, I notice how God is just completely kept out of our discussions as if there's a fear. But accepting the challenge of what Glenn said about finding solutions, you know, with God, all things are possible. And Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself. That's a solution, Glenn. If we can just start with love, I think God will give us a way to figure this whole thing out. And we'd be better off for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Marla.
I've got nothing to add. Thank you for a great discussion.
Okay, you're welcome. Glenn.
Now, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
I just want to make sure. Now, I want all of you who believe that there wasn't a problem with integration until dog people start coming over here. I want you to know that that's so unintelligent for you to say that. There's always been a problem with
Point of
immigration.
order. Not
There's
allowed
always
to
been
insult people.
there always been a problem with immigration in America. Irish people are white people. They did not want the Irish, when they had the potato blight over there, to come to America. Not even the well-established Irish people that were already here didn't want them coming here. And other European people, they didn't want the Italians coming here. So that is totally an ignorant statement to make. That it only started when the dog people start coming over here. Learn a little bit about history. That's it.
Thank you, Glenn. Greer.
There is no altruism in politics. We live in a capitalistic society. So it's about profit. This country is about profit and making money. And with that, when money is your new God, then humanity is lacking. And that's what it boils down to. And again, prayer is all we got. Because if you look at what's going on in this country now, and with having limited resources, it does not bode well for these people to even attempt to come here. Because at the end of the day, all they're going to do is write new laws to get them back where they came from. And that's basically what this article was about. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right. It's 11:20, so we actually have a little time, and after I have my final thoughts, we will
Stanton have his final thing?
Yeah,
You did?
he did.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
man. Sorry. I'll just shut up.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, I didn't hear from Louise. What you got to say, Louise?
She could point of order. All right. Could y'all chill out? Okay. Because
You just weren't listening to me as usual. Sorry.
Be quiet. You know what? Y'all need to chill out. Because I done had a very stressful week. And y'all about, one cool short. Okay. I was just gonna say, all right, in the beginning, when we lay out the rules and we read our guidelines, all right, one of the things that we instruct you to do is that we have no personal attacks. We do not attack people. We don't attack their thoughts. We do not attack their words. If you happen to disagree with someone, that's fine. You can present your argument. You can present your perspective, but you do not attack another participant. The other thing that we say in here is that Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. Okay. Religion is very personal to each person. Okay. But that is not what we discuss here. Religion. So that is off the table. We've done it before where we've had to tell people that religion is off the table because it is. That's not the issues that we're discussing here. So I would appreciate as we move forward into the future if we would follow those two rules and mind our manners. Okay, now I appreciate the discussion. It was very good. It was really, it was an excellent discussion about the topic. I learned a lot about the policies of the United States, how our policies affect countries south of our border, what makes people leave their countries, why there are some countries that do not have an immigration problem. It was very informative today. I do, however, believe that our economic system is built on an underclass. There will always be an underclass. Our economy depends on it. It used to be the Irish. It was the Italians. Whoever comes over here new, that's who it is. All right. When this country was built on slavery, that was the underclass. And when they had to free the slaves because of emancipation, then other groups began to come and they were the underclass. There will always be an underclass here. However, how we choose to allow people to come in to this country has always been discriminatory. Who gets to, basically, I was listening to, there were two women who were going for citizenship that I worked with, okay? One was from Honduras and one was from Ireland. The one from Ireland, she got asked one question. The other one basically had to read, the one from Honduras had to recite the Constitution. Okay, there are ways, the same way that they discriminated against people who were trying to register to vote, they discriminate against people for citizenship. The United States is very hypocritical about a lot of things. So anyway, that's what I have to say. Okay. Have a good week, and I guess we can stop recording now and make announcements.